Well, well, well. Hello everyone. As the title suggests, this is indeed another video about Caleb and his character. As I previously made a theory video before his release, it only made sense to delve deeper now that we have most of the details about him, his intentions and motives of him and those around him, and most importantly, what we can expect in the future. This video contains spoilers for all Caleb cards in the game, as well as texts and other content. Please note that everything I share here is based on my personal opinion and understanding of his story and character. Everyone interprets things differently, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just presenting my thoughts while also trying to view things from the MC's perspective. I also hope that most people coming here have played the main story till the end as it stands and likely just wish to make sense of it all. There's a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to try my best to explain, but I do struggle to put my thoughts and words into coherent sentences so that it's easily understandable, so please forgive me if I mess up some words here and there. Feel free to correct me in the comments, and I'm extremely sorry if you hear any background noise. I have construction going on where I live right now. It's very distracting, so I apologize in advance. Let's just get into it. It goes without saying that the main story was heavy, and the myth was no exception. By the end, I found myself feeling confused, sad, and honestly just torn about everything he's been through. I just wanted to give him a hug. It's as though his protectiveness over the MC has been taken to an extreme and transformed into paranoia. I completely understand the MC's thoughts and feelings about this because I feel the same way. And I think that's done on purpose. We're meant to feel what she feels, confused, scared and worried, and like she no longer recognizes the man before her. And although we didn't spend as much time with Caleb as the MC did, the brief interactions we had with him were enough to understand the person he used to be, or the kind of person the devs were trying to present to us. The all days cards in the game really emphasized the connection Caleb and the MC once shared, contrasting sharply with the disconnect caused by recent events. And I won't lie, some of the things Caleb says are downright problematic, but I do appreciate how the MC responds. She doesn't enable him, instead she stands her ground, telling him she doesn't like being treated like a child. It's a great way of showing her strength and independence and how much she has grown in the time that they were apart. I've collected all of Caleb's memories in the game, and it's clear that in nearly every card, yes, I sat down and watched every single one of them, the MC reflects on the unease and distance she now feels with him. The man who used to be her best friend has changed so drastically. In the main story, when Caleb has his breakdown and asks something along the lines of, "What if I tell you I've always been like this?" It's clear that he's trying to justify his behavior, but his myth suggests otherwise. His cold and rash demeanor seems to stem from the Turing chip that has been lodged in his brain. He's almost manipulating himself into believing his actions are okay, all because he wants to protect us from Eva and those who seek to exploit us, and he does this by closely working with them. Caleb's secretive nature now stands in stark contrast to his older cards, where he constantly urged us to be truthful, to not lie, and to never keep secrets from him. Now, he's the one withholding information, constantly hiding things from us. And while it is understandable that much of what Caleb knows may be classified, either beyond his ability to share or restricted by the chip, both he and the MC will eventually come to realize that in a world that has changed them so profoundly, it's nearly impossible to live without secrets. Instead of striving for complete transparency, they may find common ground in trusting one another despite not knowing every single detail of each other's lives as they once did. The shift can be especially jarring given how long they've known each other, since childhood, when honesty between them came naturally. But as people grow, so does the complexity of their experiences, and sometimes that means keeping certain things to ourselves. That doesn't mean secrets are inherently good or that withholding information is always justified, but rather that some things are personal and difficult to share or even necessary to protect the people we love. As for Caleb, I do believe he's trying to outsmart Lucius, and yes, I know that's not exactly a groundbreaking theory, I'm sure many have thought the same, But the question isn't just if he's playing a game against Lucius, it's how he plans to do it, and whether his methods will cost him more than he realizes. But I genuinely think Caleb has no intention of playing into Lucius's hand. Deep down, he seems to have a plan, and he thinks if he tells us about it, we would go headfirst into trouble, something he wants to avoid at all costs due to how protective he is. I think his plan is to either kill Lucius or make him pay for everything he's done to others, or what he wants to do to us, and so on and so forth. But I also believe that Caleb wouldn't hesitate to go to extreme lengths if his plan fails. In the end, I think Caleb would willingly sacrifice himself for us without a second thought. But what I love about this game, or any good story for that matter, is well-written characters. Nothing in the world is ever black and white. Everything and everyone carries different shades of grey, darker or lighter, and it's these complexities that we find ourselves drawn in. I really like one of Caleb's early calls in the game called Anchor Point. In it he talks about the need for an anchor in one's life, a point of stability, and by the end he reveals that his anchor is on the other side of the call, which is us. Like all the other boys in the game, each with their own flaws and challenges to overcome, Caleb has his own journey of growth ahead. A central part of that growth will be learning to trust the MC, not just as someone to protect, but as a person and a potential partner. These two things aren't mutually exclusive, they can coexist. Similarly, as the MC, we're also meant to grow. We need to stop viewing Caleb as a dependable older brother figure, and as someone who can never change, just as Caleb needs to recognize that the MC has matured and will continue to evolve, whether apart from him, with him, or even despite him. Caleb constantly brings up the past, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but he clings to it so desperately that he fails to see what's right in front of him. Part of me wonders if he does this because he's afraid that the MC won't accept him as he is now, or as the person he's becoming, or even as whoever he might become in the future. And that's an understandable fear, especially when you consider how drastically their relationship has changed. In the past, things between them were effortless, but now there's an undeniable distance. Their interactions are tense, almost as if they're walking on eggshells around each other, uncertain of how to bridge the gap. But despite this awkwardness, there is still hope. At the end of nearly every card that takes place post-main story and myth, slowly they are finding new ways to rebuild and repair their relationship, trying to exist in the present rather than being shackled to the past. But that's exactly the problem. The past is all Caleb has left that feels stable. It's not just that he refuses to let go, it's that his memories are the only things that bring him any sense of comfort. Given everything that has happened to him, everything he has done, it makes sense that he clings to those memories of familiarity. Because if he lets go of them, what's left? And it's exactly this fear he needs to overcome. The tighter we hold on to something that is slipping away, the faster it disappears. And Caleb is caught in this cycle, grasping desperately for the past, unable to accept that things have changed. He reassures the MC that she doesn't need to do anything, that he'll protect her just as he did when they were children, but he doesn't realize, or perhaps refuses to accept, that she doesn't need that kind of protection anymore, that they both need something different now. And I believe this stems not just from nostalgia, but from deep-seated paranoia, the fear of losing the one thing that has kept him grounded all this time. When everything else in his life has spiraled beyond control, this is the one thing he still hopes to hold on to. But his journey forward isn't about preserving something that no longer fits. It's about learning to find a balance, to let go of the past without losing himself, to embrace the present even if it scares him, and most importantly, to realize that he and the MC can build something new together. Not by recreating what they once had, but by moving forward into something that's different yet just as meaningful. I don't think Caleb wants what's being done to him. I mean, who would? But he's willing to endure it if it means keeping us safe. In nearly every card, his self-depreciation is evident. He knows his behavior upsets us, yet he can't seem to stop himself. His emotions fluctuate wildly, his struggles are painfully visible, and he hates that we have to see him like this. He despises the idea of appearing weak in front of us. But that's what makes it so important, that as the MC, we have the chance to tell him that we want to be there for him, just as he has always been there for us. This is crucial for his self-growth, both as a person and as a partner. He needs to understand that he is just as important as the MC, even if he has spent his whole life living for her. And more than that, he needs to realize that his pain doesn't exist in isolation. It hurts her too. What worries me most, though, is the touring chip in Caleb's brain and what it's slowly doing to him. It seems to be amplifying the paranoia that has been growing inside of him ever since he learned the truth about Eva's plans for us. And without a healthy way to process these emotions, that paranoia manifests in ways that is controlling, suffocating, and unhealthy. It's clear that he hasn't felt in control of himself for a long time, and that loss of control is breaking him down, piece by piece. One thing that really fascinated me was an aspect in Caleb's myth, the dream that the MC has about him. Its symbolism aligns closely with many of the theories I've discussed before, offering new insights into his character. It's a well-crafted foundation for Caleb's story moving forward. It's dark, tragic, and unsettling, but it's not without hope. Since Caleb returned to me, I rarely had any nightmares about him, but I dreamed of him that night. There was no sun. He floated within a dark green jungle. The ropes that bound him morphed into vines sprouting from sturdy branches. They wrapped around his wrists and ankles like venomous snakes flicking their tongues. Every muscle swelled under the vine's encroachment. Tiny hair-like thorns pierced his skin and greedily siphoned nutrients from his flesh. They then injected new toxins into his nerves. His body trembled, like a beast caught in a trap, struggling against the restraints that only grew tighter with every move. Finally, he crashed into the dirt, buried by leaves carrying the sense of decay. A wilted leaf fell down slowly. It covered his hollow eye socket. The jungle devoured his body, leaving him as a withered tree choked by its grasp. The sun often symbolizes life, clarity, and hope, and its absence often suggests despair, abandonment, or a descent into chaos. Caleb, who was always a radiant presence in the MC's life, a warmth like summer, has now become shrouded in darkness. This despair stems from his fears for both his and the MC's future. His decision to join the fleet, effectively pretending to be dead, represents a kind of abandonment. His erratic behavior throughout the story reflects his descent into moral and emotional turmoil. The opening lines of Dante's Inferno go as follows. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, for the straightforward path had been lost. This mirrors Caleb's loss of direction, his inability to reconcile his past and present selves. The absence of the sun's light showcases this. He is often difficult for the MC to understand. His kindness and protectiveness tend to clash with his morally grey actions, both in his work with Eva and his relentless need to shield the MC. The sunless jungle represents his warped perception of reality, a world without light where the only path forward is survival at any cost. Interestingly, Caleb has always been associated with brightness and summer, colours like orange and yellow that symbolize warmth and vitality. This dream, however, is a twisted inversion of that paradise, a corrupted Garden of Eden, one that suggests how far he has fallen. The vines in the dream, which the MC describes as venomous snakes, symbolize hidden dangers and suffocating control. Their slow, constricting nature mirrors how Caleb is ensnared by Eva, trapped in a system he cannot escape. Vines often represent entrapment, twisting around their host until they can no longer breathe freely. Thorns, on the other hand, symbolize the need for protection and how tightly Eva has his clutches in him. Caleb's defenses, his emotional walls, the barriers he erects even as he longs to be close to the main character. Ever's influence is the snake-like vines, tightening its grip on him with every passing day. As I suggested in a previous theory, Caleb's arc parallels the temptation of man, the apple and the serpent, but the tale has been twisted to fit this story better. And while the apple motif has several other meanings, in this scenario, I think the MC represents the apple that cannot grow in this dark forest, one hidden away in the depths of his mind. The one thing Caleb cherishes and wants to protect at all costs, while Eva is the snake, whispering manipulation and coercion into his ear as they flick their tongues, and tightens his grasp around him in the guise of ropes, vines. Caleb's ultimate challenge is to save what he loves while resisting the forces that seek to corrupt him, though it's unclear whether he can do so without falling further into the abyss himself. The draining of nutrients and the injection of toxins in the dream parallels Ever's physical and emotional manipulation of Caleb. His bionic arm and the Turing chip are literal representations of this. They alter his body, his mind, his very sense of self. In Painful Signal, Caleb describes how he gradually lost feeling in his arm until the only thing he could feel was pain. The main story even hints at Ever's intention of turning him into their perfect vessel, which is an unsettling concept to say the least. This suggests that he's not just being physically modified, but mentally reprogrammed, his autonomy and emotions being slowly stripped away. The Turing chip is warping his mind, amplifying his paranoia and reinforcing his belief that he must suffer to protect us, not to mention the dehumanizing environment of the fleet that he has had to put up with and adapt to fit in. Caleb is like a caged beast, stripped of freedom, dignity, and choice. He's constantly battling physical and emotional agony. His arm is a perpetual reminder of Ever's control over him. His journey has undoubtedly required sacrifices he didn't want to make, forcing him into morally questionable decisions that now haunt him, something which is evident in the fact that he now struggles to sleep well. Trapped in Ever's grasp, he cannot see a way out. But the dream forces us to confront just how deeply he is suffering, highlighting his desperate need for escape, healing, or even just the smallest amount of peace. Wilted leaves in the dream symbolize decay, neglect, and the absence of light. They suggest that summer, which is often a time of warmth and happiness for many, is long gone, leaving only lifeless remnants behind. Decaying leaves in narrative frequently represent the passage of time, the inevitability of death, or the loss of vitality. But the most haunting image is the hollow eye socket, covered by a wilted leaf. Empty eye sockets or missing eyes often symbolize death, exhaustion, and suffering, or a loss of will to live. And this is particularly tragic for Caleb because his gaze has always been one of his defining features, warm, determined, welcoming, and full of life. To imagine that the light in his eyes could fade away is heartbreaking, and we see several instances of this in the main story. It suggests that he's so utterly drained, so emotionally and physically exhausted that his very essence, the part of him that has always fought to keep going, might be slipping away. In Renaissance and Baroque art, memento mori paintings often depicted skulls with hollow eye sockets as a reminder of life's impermanence and the inevitability of death. This is fitting for Caleb, a man who has cheated death once before and now faces it every single day in his line of work. His missing eye could represent not just physical injury, but also the deep psychological wounds left by war, trauma, and betrayal. This dream reflects the MC's deepest fears, I think, that Caleb will be lost to Ever's control, irreversibly changed into something unrecognizable. This is the worst possible future, the path he might take if nothing changes. As much as the vision terrifies the MC, it also serves as a reminder of why she needs to reach him before it's too late. Caleb himself acknowledges this in the anchor point call. We are his anchor, something to stop him from drifting further into the abyss. I can understand why the MC dreams this. It's a manifestation of her fears, of what she dreads most. But there is another way to interpret this, one that offers hope rather than despair. The MC could become the sun that Caleb lacks, illuminating his dark jungle and reviving the wilting leaves. The thorns and vines, the forces controlling him, may never fully disappear, but together they have a better chance of keeping them at bay. Vines can symbolize restraint, yes, but they also symbolize growth, protection, and support. And perhaps, just as Caleb has always been there for the MC, she can now be the one to pull him back from the darkness. The MC and Caleb are in a strange transition phase, no longer who they were in the past, but not yet who they are meant to be. Their relationship is evolving, and as they move forward, they will need to be each other's protectors. This balance of mutual care, trust, and resilience will be key to their growth, not just as individuals, but together. There's still hope for Caleb, and for the two of them to forge something new, not just by recreating the past, but by stepping into the unknown together. In his latest cards, the ones that take place after the main story and myth, we see the first signs of this change. These cards suggest that Caleb is slowly beginning to understand the need to let go of the past and embrace the present, even if it's a difficult and painful process. Through these moments, we start to see a path forward for him and the MC. One where growth, healing, and reconciliation might finally be possible. But Caleb is still deeply afraid that we hate him or that one day we will. He knows his actions have upset us, and in some ways he's right. But as the MC is trying to convey, just because things are complicated doesn't mean we don't care for him or that we want him gone from our life entirely. What I appreciate is that the story doesn't instantly force us into a romance with Caleb. Instead, we're given space to relearn each other, to understand him, to navigate the changes that time and circumstances have forced upon us both. Right now, the focus isn't on rekindling what once was, it's about understanding who they are now and whether there's still a future for both of them together as they are today. What Caleb needs to understand is that the peace he craves, the peace he wants for both of them, won't come from keeping the MC locked away in a gilded cage. True peace will come from making her feel safe and included, not isolated. He needs to stop treating her like a stranger in her own life and instead see her as his partner, someone who stands beside him, not behind, not someone to be shielded from the world, but to face it head on with him by her side. Caleb sometimes claims to be content with keeping us at arm's length, but his cards reveal something far more complicated, that he longs for the MC, aching to be by her side despite everything. This is especially evident in the New Year card, where he confesses his fear that we'll hate him or regret letting him back into our life. It's a very nice moment because in it we see a side of Caleb that feels miles away from the version of him that we encounter in the uniform. And MC notes multiple times that Caleb in uniform is different, a man swallowed by duty and responsibility, and his best qualities twisted into something darker. Yet in this card, he's stripped of that facade. He allows himself to be open, vulnerable, and honest, perhaps for the very first time. And since this moment marks the latest point in the timeline, it suggests that Caleb and the MC are beginning to find common ground, however uncertain it may be. There's still a long road ahead of them, but it feels like Caleb is starting to understand that this isn't a journey he has to or even can walk alone. As I theorized in my earlier video, and as we see more or less confirmed now, his path forward seems to be one of acceptance, learning to control his darker impulses, to let go rather than grip onto things he's losing, and to forgive himself for things he cannot change. And just as he must grow, so must the MC, learning to be more patient and understanding of the impossible weight that he carries. Together, they will forge something new, not by clinging to the past, but by making new memories, just as we as players do alongside them. Despite how gut-wrenching Caleb's story is, I'm glad he turned out to be very, very close to what I'd hoped or what I'd imagined in my first video about him. A deeply layered, complex character who defies being one-dimensional. His struggles, flaws, and moments of growth make him feel so real, and that's what makes the story so compelling. This is my third Caleb video on the channel in a row. I may be a little obsessed, but I have been waiting for him for a very long time, like so many of you, and I just couldn't contain my thoughts about him. He's just such a good character, and I'm so glad that he's finally in the game. But yeah, I had to make another video to not only make sense of everything that has happened, but also to lay the potential groundwork for what's to come. And I can only hope I'm right. Again, nothing set in stone. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read what everyone has to say. And yeah, take care and good hunting.